So next week, President Trump plans to celebrate the 100th day of his second term with a rally in Michigan. But new numbers suggest voters are not pleased with the job he's done so far. According to the latest Fox News poll, overall approval of Trump's job performance comes in at 44%. That's down 5 points from 49% approval just last month in March. So now to put that into context, that is lower than the approval of Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and George W. Bush at their 100-day marks in their presidencies. It is also lower than Trump's approval, in fact, at this point 8 years ago. Contributing to Trump's underwater start, voter disapproval on every single one of his policies except the border. According to New York Times analysis, Trump's job approval has been on a steady downward trajectory now for months. But so far, the Trump administration is not backing down on anything. And joining us now, we have co-host of the Bulwarks for You podcast, Cameron Kasky, and senior writer at The Dispatch, David Drucker. Welcome to you both. David, you first here. What are your thoughts on Trump's current trajectory? He is underwater on most issues. What is working and what is not? And do you see him potentially turning things around, and how?
Well, presidents can always turn things around. Events intervene. They can also change course. So we'll just have to see, whether events intervene with Trump or whether he changes course. The big one, of course, is the economy. If he was hired to do anything, there were two things there. One is the border, and his numbers there are good. And I think that's why he's not suffering really much blowback from all of these legal issues surrounding due process and whether or not he's following the law in the way that he is deporting illegal immigrants, and the fact that some legal immigrants are getting caught up in that. But there was so much frustration and concern about public safety related to the southern border that Trump has a lot of political latitude there. Yeah. But the economy is something where he's clearly suffered. I mean, this isn't brain surgery at this point, but when you pick a trade war with every country on earth and it doesn't go well, you have a lot of voters saying Trump was the guy that was going to lower inflation. Trump was the guy that, even if I didn't always like the way he behaved and maybe things are, chaotic now and then, he's a businessman. He ran a good economy in the first term, except for COVID, which we don't really think is his fault. That's how voters looked at it when I interviewed them all over the country last year. And so the economy, he's going to get right for me. And right now, he's not getting that right. And I think, again, it's plainly obvious here, but that's his biggest problem.
Okay. Cameron, do you know, because just under 1/3 of young people, we're going to put you in that category as well, approve of Trump's job performance. That's according to the latest Harvard Youth poll. It found only 15% of young people believe the United States is headed in the right direction under President Trump. Look, he made pretty significant gains during the campaign and ultimately in the election back in November with younger voters. What was it that younger voters expected from Donald Trump, and why do you think the sheen has worn off so quickly?
I don't think young people knew what to expect. I mean, while we were growing up, our parents lost their jobs and houses in 2008. We were watching schools get shot up. COVID happened, and all these kids were graduating high school from their computers. Gen Z doesn't really have an idea of what America looks like when it's supposedly working. So Donald Trump comes in and he says, I'm going to change things. We don't look into how he's going to do it because social media has trained us to only be able to focus on stuff for 7 seconds. But he says he's going to change things, and we know that things need to change. But suddenly, the attack on the economy happens, and people my age are starting to get an understanding. The problem is a lot of them think that Trump has some bigger plan here. Like with the tariffs, for example, we haven't even felt the consequences of the tariffs in our pockets. The trade with China effectively shut down April 10th. Takes around a month for a shipping container to get from there to the United States. Suddenly, prices are going to soar, and Trump's going to do what he always does, which is create a mess, watch everybody get upset about it, solve it, and take credit. But the problem is the factories in China will have already laid people off. The American person who contributes to the economy is already going to be underwater. We're not going to be able to fix this overnight.
People will have lost money. They will have lost money by that point.
And beyond that, even in the best case scenario, where China's just willing to let bygones be bygones and be besties again, they are still going to take a hit from this that affects their manufacturing capacity. And people my age just think that Trump must have a plan. But this man has bankrupted so many businesses and convinced fully grown adults with college degrees that he's a good businessman. So I don't exactly know how we're going to be able to hold him accountable for this.
Extraordinary. So, David, let's look at Yale's youth poll, which found, despite the pessimism, more young people, men and women, are identifying as Republican. Why do you think that is?
Well, I talked to the pollsters there at the Yale Youth Poll, and what they found was that younger voters have a lot of distrust in our institutions, and Donald Trump really reflects that, right? I mean, even when he's running the government, we saw this in the first term, we're now seeing it in the second term. Even when he's in charge, he's lashing out at the very government that he's running, and that resonates with a lot of younger voters who, as we've just laid out here, Great Recession, pandemic, all of these reasons to not trust institutions. And he speaks to that, and look, during the campaign, what Donald Trump was able to do, and, it matters whether he can deliver on this, but what he was able to do was, one, be the change candidate, and everybody likes the change candidate, but also promise a brighter future. I also think that, and it's sort of ironic because Donald Trump's mishandling of the pandemic is what cost him in large part the 2020 election. But the fact that Trump and the Republican ended up fierce critics of all of the measures taken to deal with the pandemic, school closures, lockdowns, some of these pushed by the Trump administration at the time, belittling masks and vaccines, for younger voters that had to live through their formative teenage years at home, and their window to the world was social media, and a social media dominated by conservative influencers and podcasters. They look at the Republican Party as the party that said, yeah, none of that was a good idea. And I think that has helped Trump with this younger cohort.
Cameron, give me a quick line of attack Democrats can use to help up their profile and win in next elections. Is there something you think that's going to work?
I think the first step is probably going to be the Democratic Party stopping the attacks on each other. Because while MAGA is this unified front where even the so-called moderate conservatives are bending the knee to Donald Trump, the Democratic Party took this staggering loss that we suffered and said, okay, let's figure out who within our own party to blame. So, in colloquial terms, the girls are fighting right now in the Democratic Party. And it's this Real Housewivesian drama that's really embarrassing for us. And young people see us with our shoelaces tied together, and we don't really know what to do. So if I were the Democratic Party, I would get my house in order before I try to ask a generation that we failed to reach to vote for us. But, Donald Trump is going to create several more disasters by the time of our next elections. So the Democratic Party needs to get the messaging right. Yeah.
I got to say, you and your perspective have inspired me that the youth of America has an idea what to do and how to go forward. Cameron Kasky, thank you for that. David Drucker, as always, you just inspired me as well. Thanks, guys.